Welcome back to the deep dive.
Good to be diving in again.
So today, we're looking at a really specific and pretty dramatic moment in history, right after World War II in Romania.
Yeah, the shift right after King Michael's abdication in 47, that moment when it really tipped over into a full Soviet-style state.
Exactly. And that kicked off this incredibly systematic process to dismantle religious independence. It seems to start really intensely in 1948.
Oh, absolutely. It was quite something how quickly the state moved using the law, legal mandates to completely redraw the lines between Bucharest and ordinary believers.
And that's what we want to trace, isn't it? That sort of surgical approach to the law is the human cost.
And how it played out differently for different groups, the Orthodox majority versus some of the smaller, heavily persecuted denominations. We'll focus a bit on Arid County, too, where we see some stark examples.
Okay, so the first move. Repealing that old 1928 law on religious denominations. On the surface, it sounds almost progressive.
Right. That's the cynicism of it. Officially, the line was, oh, this old law was too restrictive. It unfairly favored Greek Orthodoxy.
Which sounds reasonable enough on paper, addressing a historical issue.
Exactly. A very clever piece of political maneuvering. Because our sources make it really clear this was, and I'm quoting here, merely a distraction.
Yeah.
The communists used that language, liberalization, fairness, just to clear the decks.
So they could then impose their own system, total control.
Precisely. Total, centralized, totalitarian control. The old structures were gone. Now they could build theirs.
And they didn't waste any time.
Yeah.
1948, the new rules start coming thick and fast.
Yeah.
First step seems to be about loyalty. Right. Mandatory loyalty.
Mandatory, codified loyalty. That law from March 2nd, 1948 set the tone. It wasn't just asking nicely. It demanded total loyalty to the state authorities.
And that hit everywhere. Every church, mosque.
Everywhere. And they had teeth. Article 14, for instance, made it compulsory for all denominations to hold special services commemorating Romanian national holidays.
So the state entering the sanctuary, demanding affirmation.
Pretty much. And then there was the oath. This was quite chilling. Every single leader, every priest had to swear loyalty.
What did the oath actually say?
They had to swear to be loyal to the people and to defend the Romanian People's Republic from internal and external enemies.
Wow. Internal and external enemies. That puts clergy right into the state security framework.
Instantly. And they had leaders taking this oath literally in front of Petru Groza, the head of the government, within weeks.
What happened if someone refused? What were the immediate consequences of not taking this oath?
Well, the risk was immediate. You could be removed from your position, denied recognition, maybe even detained. If you didn't swear, you were effectively labeled an internal enemy yourself.
So it established this political test right away. Comply or you're out.
Exactly. And that paved the way for the next big piece of legislation, the formal framework for state control, which landed on August 4th, 1948.
Okay, so this August law, this is where they really formalize the state's right to supervise, to control, setting up the system for deciding who gets to survive, basically.
That's it. It sorted the denominations. Who was compliant enough, who was, doomed.
So who made the initial cut? Which groups got recognized?
14 churches initially. It included the big historical faiths, Romanian Orthodox, Roman Catholic, Jewish, Muslim, some of the established Protestant groups like Lutherans and Calvinists.
Crucially,
It also included 4 specific neo-Protestant groups like Baptists and Pentecostals. They were now legal, recognized entities.
Okay, so some neo-Protestants were in.
Yeah.
But the hammer fell elsewhere.
Oh, yes. Immediately, the state banned 7 other smaller neo-Protestant groups, labeling them sects.
And the justification.
Subversive to the state. They were just wiped off the map legally, stripped of any rights.
So that's a key distinction. You had 4 recognized neo-Protestant groups getting state aid, right? Money for salaries, building.
Yes, all the recognized churches got state aid, except those 4 neo-Protestant ones, but they were still legal. The other 7, though, instantly criminalized. Recognition bought you state oversight and maybe some funding. Non-recognition meant outright persecution from day one.
Okay, so August defines who's in, then December comes, and they single out a major target to kick out, the Greek Catholic Church.
Decree number 358, December 1st, 1948. It didn't just restrict the Greek Catholic Church, also known as the Uniate Church, it abolished it outright.
Abolished out, and their property. Churches, land.
The vast majority was immediately transferred by the state directly to the Romanian Orthodox Church.
Wow, so why them? Why single out the Greek Catholics for complete abolition while the Orthodox Church not only survives, but actually profits from it?
Well, it's pretty clear it was strategic politics. The Greek Catholic Church was mainly in Transylvania, and crucially, it maintained loyalty to the Vatican.
An external influence.
Exactly, an external anti-communist influence. Plus, maybe a potential source of regional identity the regime couldn't control. The Romanian Orthodox Church, on the other hand, based in Bucharest. Well, sources say it was much more willing to cooperate.
The historian Harold Roth points this out, right?
Yeah, Roth calls the Romanian Orthodox Church the de facto state religion. It benefited hugely from the Greek Catholics being abolished and became essentially a tool for state propaganda nationalist messaging.
A classic divide and conquer strategy. But surely not all the Greek Catholic clergy just accepted this.
Oh, definitely not. There was resistance. People like Bishop Uliohasu protested very strongly.
And the state's response?
Arrests, detention, long prison sentences. This really kicked off a wave of persecution that quickly spread to other minority church leaders.
Which brings us to the Roman Catholics.
Hmm.
Obviously, their link to the Vatican made them a prime target, too. We hear about some really flagrant cases.
Absolutely flagrant. You think of Bishop Martin Aaron of Alba Iulia, a major figure, sentenced in 1951 to hard labor for life.
For life.
For life. Now, he was eventually released years later, but essentially kept under house arrest. And we have to remember those who died in prison, like Auxiliary Bishop Bogdan Fisilard and Bishop Sefer Janos. These weren't isolated incidents. It was about decapitating the church leadership.
And if arrests didn't break them, the state tried another tactic, trying to force them to cut ties with Rome.
Yes, they pushed really hard for the Catholic clergy to form some kind of independent, national Romanian Catholic Church, sever all links with the Vatican.
How did that go down?
The vast majority refused. Just flat out refused, even knowing it meant likely imprisonment or worse. They chose persecution over breaking with Rome.
That level of defiance, it must have pushed the regime towards other methods, economic warfare.
Exactly. If you can't break their spirit, break their ability to function, the nationalization law of 1948 was the key weapon here.
That sounds all-encompassing. What did it actually take from the churches?
Pretty much everything that generated income or provided social services, all their land, forests, any rental properties seized, gone.
And not just the money sources.
No. Crucially, they shut down all the confessional schools. All the church-run social institutions, orphanages, soup kitchens, asylums, everything.
So that destroyed their traditional role in society, beyond just worship.
Completely.
Yeah.
It isolated them financially, but also socially. Took away their visibility and their function as community providers. In Arad, for example, the theological seminary was abolished, the big Pierist high school, the minorite gymnasium, all nationalized, gone.
Okay, so you strip away the wealth, you strip away the social mission. The next logical step seems to be controlling the supply of priests themselves, especially for those minority churches.
Precisely. Create a managed decline. They shut down most of the seminaries, consolidating training into just two main centers, one Catholic in Alba Iulia, one Protestant in Cluj.
But consolidation wasn't the real control mechanism, was it? It was something else.
The real killer was the numerus clausus, a strict quota.
A quota on how many students could even train to be priests.
Exactly. A hard limit decided centrally in Bucharest by the authorities.
That sounds less like administration and more like, well, deliberately engineering a shortage.
It was demographic sabotage, plain and simple. The goal wasn't necessarily mass executions of priests, so that happened too, but ensuring the churches just slowly withered away, died a slow, quiet death.
Because the few graduates couldn't possibly replace those retiring, dying, or leaving.
Not even close. The numbers are stark. By 1990, the Archdiocese of Alba Iulia alone had 51 parishes, just empty, vacant, out of 271. The lights were genuinely going out in many places.
And this extended to the written word too, didn't it? Controlling information, controlling scripture.
Total control over print. Church printing presses were nationalized, church newspapers banned. And officially, you were not allowed to print the Bible in Romania.
Cut off the spiritual resources at the source.
The aim was to starve people spiritually.
But then there's that strange detail. Later on, after 1950, the regime actually allowed tens of thousands of Bibles to be imported officially. How does that square?
Yeah, that seems contradictory, doesn't it? But it looks like that was almost entirely for share, for international consumption, to project an image of religious tolerance to the West.
So window dressing.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Because the reality on the ground remained incredibly harsh. There's this really grim detail in the sources. People finding fragments of Bibles being used as toilet paper.
Oh, wow.
It implies that even with official imports domestically, religious texts were still scarce and likely being destroyed. Making or selling religious items, you could face years in prison, like Ferenc Bella in Arid County, who was caught doing just that.
So underneath the laws, the economic pressure, the supply control, there's the secret police, the Securitate. The Department of Cults might handle the paperwork, but the Securitate were the real force.
Absolutely. The Department of Cults, which used to be the ministry, basically became a front office for the Securitate.
How did that work day to day?
In every county, they appointed a specific person. Their job, overseen directly by the Securitate, was to monitor churches, intervene when needed, and basically initiate actions against clergy members who stepped out of line. They ensured the rules served the Securitate's political goals.
And getting that level of control meant getting inside the churches themselves.
Oh, yes. An insidious internal network. The Securitate became masters at finding weaknesses, money problems, personal secrets, family vulnerabilities.
And using that for blackmail?
Blackmail, threats against family, whatever it took to force priests or church leaders to collaborate, to become informants.
Are there known cases?
The most shocking one mentioned is Pap Laszlo, a Reformed church bishop. Turned out he'd been a Securitate agent for 22 years.
The bishop, working against his own church from the inside.
For over 2 decades, it shows the depth of the penetration they achieved.
And when surveillance and blackmail weren't enough, they used show trials. You mentioned the Arid conspiracy in 1957. That sounds ominous.
It was pure terror theater, designed to scare everyone into silence. A priest, Shabazley Aladar, along with 2 other priests and 7 laypeople, were arrested. Armed conspiracy against the state, almost certainly trumped up charges.
And the state's reaction was designed to send a message.
A brutal message. So Bosley and several others were executed September 1st, 1958.
Executed.
And the sentences for the others in that one trial, they totaled something like 1,300 years of hard labor and imprisonment. Think about that number, 1,300 years, including a Minorite priest, Karaksani Estefan, who died in the labor camp. It wasn't justice, it was about crushing any potential dissent.
Shifting focus slightly to the Neo-Protestants again. There's this real paradox, isn't there?
Yeah.
They faced persecution before the war, yet under the early communist regime, their numbers actually shot up.
It's really counterintuitive. Groups like the Baptists and Pentecostals, their numbers nearly tripled in that first decade, from about 73,000 to over 190,000, especially out west, in places like Ard.
Why do you think that happened?
It's hard to say for sure, but maybe the collapse of the old structures, the discrediting of the traditional churches in some eyes, made these simpler, less hierarchical faiths more appealing. Maybe the state initially underestimated them.
But that growth didn't continue unchecked. Things tightened up again later.
Oh yeah, that relative boom didn't last. By the mid-70s, under Ceausescu, the state started clamping down hard again.
What changed? Why target them more aggressively then?
Ceausescu consolidated his personal power, and the regime became much more rigid ideologically. They launched these intense atheist education campaigns.
So it moved beyond just restricting worship.
Yes, it became active ideological warfare. For example, they'd require village cultural centers to deliberately schedule films or other activities on Sunday mornings.
And keep kids away from church.
Exactly. To physically prevent children from attending services and catechism, which was often banned anyway. They started closing more places of worship, banning things like river baptisms, making public expressions of faith very difficult.
And then there's the ultimate expression of that ideology, not just controlling minds, but literally destroying the physical symbols of faith and history.
The level of cultural vandalism is just appalling. In Arad, you have the Holy Trinity statue, a historical monument from 1901, just demolished in 1962. Gone.
Just like that.
Just like that. But the story of the St. Florian Chapel is even more brazen. This was another historical monument, mid-18th century. Really significant.
Oh, what happened to it?
Destroyed, bulldozed, in a single night.
A single night. How?
July 21st, 1978. According to the sources, bulldozers just showed up and leveled it overnight. There was apparently no official authorization, no paperwork, nothing.
Why the secrecy? Why the rush?
They wanted the land
Yeah.
to build a parking lot for the internal affairs, basically, the police and Securitate headquarters.
Destroying an 18th century monument for a parking lot. That says a lot.
It perfectly captures the regime's arrogance and impunity, doesn't it? Especially the Securitate's power.
Yet despite all this, the laws, the poverty, the secret police, the destruction faith didn't just disappear. There was resilience.
Absolutely. Deep resilience. Take the pilgrimage to the minor basilica in Radna. It's a centuries-old tradition. The state tried to stop it, surveilled it intensely.
And people kept going.
They kept going. It was such a powerful, popular display of faith that eventually the state kind of gave up trying to stamp it out completely. They even ended up renovating parts of the church exterior.
Why would they do that?
Again, probably for appearances, especially for foreign visitors, to maintain that thin facade of tolerance. But the pilgrimage itself, that was pure people power, pure resilience.
So we've touched on Orthodoxy, Catholicism, Neo-Protestants. But the experience of Romania's Jewish community seems particularly complex, bringing us to our final thoughts. They also faced institutional destruction in 1948, didn't they?
Yes, schools, clubs, social organizations shut down. That part fits the pattern of destroying cultural infrastructure.
But alongside that,
Alongside that, the state pursued what looks like a very different double policy. While destroying institutions, they also allowed, and in some ways managed, the emigration of Jewish citizens. This started in waves right from 1947 onwards.
and the demographic impact was huge.
Massive. The community shrank incredibly fast, from around 11,600 right after the war in Arad County, down to maybe only 450 or 500 by 1990. A huge decline.
So that leaves us, and you the listener, with a really difficult final thought. We've seen the state actively trying to kill off religious institutions, using economics, police power, ideology.
But for the Jewish community, the policy mix was different. Institutional destruction plus allowing, even facilitating, physical departure.
So the question becomes, was allowing immigration in this context of total control and persecution of others actually a cynical, quiet form of persecution itself, a way to get rid of a community?
Or perhaps was it a tragic but maybe necessary escape route, an unintended or maybe even intended valve for a community that otherwise faced certain cultural death and maybe worse violence inside Romania?
What stands out to you when you consider these starkly different strategies and outcomes for Romania's diverse religious groups under that communist regime? Something to think about.